So we have this amazing guy called Kevin.
They might not be charging enough. It's not sustainable.
Who works for us as a freelancer, as a sales closer.
Pricing determines everything.
Be like, hey, Kevin, what are the fields that you need?
To hit that 2 million, if Ali could just change one thing.
We've got a bunch of unqualified leads, so how do we qualify them more before they hit the sales call? And
I advised against it, and now they're realizing, oh shoot, this is really, really expensive. My prediction, if we keep the pricing at 5 to 6K, we're going to run into...
We wish we had someone like Kevin, cover Kevin in sales from day one.
So in today's podcast, I want to bring you behind the scenes of what it's like relaunching Ali Abdaal's Accelerator YouTube offer. Now, it's been a while since I've done this podcast, but one of the things I kind of want to do is have a more unscripted, more casual conversation about how I think about high ticket sales and kind of what I do behind the clients for my high-end clients. I guess the thing with the podcasts that I really like, and it's actually the content that I personally watch, is a lot of them are like really unscripted and it feels like more like a conversation. And I think the goal behind this channel was always to have the business and life advice from your best friend. So that's kind of what I'm going for. But in today's podcast, I actually prepared like 4 pages of notes, which I'll be referring to. But I want to do, I think, 5 things. 1, show you the behind the scenes of what a $1 million plus launch looks like. Show you a little bit about what I do as a fractional head of sales for someone like Ali Abdaal and these YouTubers. And also I want to show you behind the scenes of how we do a non-salesy way of selling high ticket offers without the Wolf of Wall Street vibes. I feel like a lot of times we have this idea that we have to like sell ourselves or like pitch and all that, which we don't have to if we position the offer right. And then probably a lot of you watching this too are really into Hormozy or Daniel Priestley, and you're probably wondering like, how do I do this in real time, like IRL? So I want to show you what it looks like in practice there. And for my fellow closers, high ticket salespeople and stuff, I want to show you what it's like expanding beyond the role of just a closer and what it looks like and the skills needed to expand beyond that and become like a head of sales or, you know, chief revenue officer and all that sort of stuff too. Fractional. I mean, it's all startup stuff, so it's not like official stuff, but yeah. I don't want to expose any like confidential stuff with Ali and all that. So I might change some of the numbers and all that too on this podcast. Anyways, this whole podcast was actually inspired by my friend Angel. She actually told me that Ali was on a podcast with Matthew Gray.
So we have this amazing guy called Kevin who works for us as a freelancer, as a sort of sales closer. He took our YouTuber Academy years ago and enjoys working with our team, and he's amazing. And we also have Saf, who is our kind of HubSpot guy on the sales and marketing side, who is sort of working with Kevin to be like, hey, Kevin, what are the fields that you need to be populated? And then Kevin's giving him feedback to be like, oh, actually, sometimes, we've got a bunch of unqualified leads. So how do we qualify them more before they hit the sales call? And, all that kind of stuff.
So basically what I do for Ali right now is I do all his high ticket sales. I help advise a little bit. I'm pretty much his unofficial head of sales right now, because I'm the only one. I find that at his stage, as he's trying to go past 1 million or even 2 million, that's the ideal goal per year. They're leaning to me on advisory and stuff. I think it's really, really like flattering to do that. And a lot of the stuff I would probably charge a lot more money for other people, but it's Ali. I really love his brand. I've been a consumer and I want to see people grow too. So yeah, and plus it'll be a killer case study, like no lie. Anyways, you might be like wondering, well, what's your background? Why should I listen to you? And if you're new to this channel, basically, I used to be a pharmacist, but I actually left behind that life to quit to become a YouTuber. It just wasn't really fulfilling for me. So I left the life of running like my pharmacy like back in Hollywood and stuff in the California life as a legal drug dealer to just do YouTube. After leaving 6 years ago, I realized that it's really hard just to sustain a lifestyle just as a YouTuber. And so I studied everything from copywriting to offer creation to high ticket sales and more. and offer these as services and combine these things together along with like branding as well. And so like nowadays, I think like one of the missions on my channel, as I've been kind of reflecting and slowing down the content on my channel, I realized that my mission, the thing that I really love doing or I want to do, is just create the best online school for creators. And so if you look at my channel, a lot of things I put out are absolutely 100% free. I do have some high ticket offers for consulting and all that, but those are for more advanced people. And I do have a YouTube mastermind along with some accelerators too, because what you'll quickly find, what the trolls and people like CoffeeZilla don't tell you, is that there's a level of element of experience and wisdom that a course can't teach you. And there's a high ignorance tax just for doing courses. Now, you could prove me wrong. I mean, I learned a lot of my high ticket sales just from courses and stuff too, and education has changed the aspect of my life. But I believe that, like for me, my personal philosophy is just like give everything for free, all the courses and all that, and just charge for the implementation, which is kind of what I do. Anyways, when I transitioned, a lot of my clients were ClickFunnels gurus, but I hated it because it was really fake, it was really inauthentic. And now I teach, I used to teach high ticket people how to do high ticket closing without the Wolf of Wall Street vibes. But one of the things that I feel more passionate about is teaching creators a more ethical way to sell. And that's usually by, yes, sales riz, I guess, like selling in a non-salesy way. But it also comes down to creating irresistible offers so you don't have to rely on those skills. And then having the right branding and the right culture so that it just reduces the friction of hiring more help, and you just work with the people that you want to, resentment free. And that's going to be a huge theme as we talk about today. Now, you might be wondering, well, Kevin, how did you get in touch with Ali? He's such a big YouTuber. And one of the ways I actually landed Ali as a client was I was a consumer of his. So back in, I think 2020 or something like that, a few years ago, basically what happened, he was doing a pilot launch for his cohorts for the PTYA, Part-Time YouTuber Academy. I was one of the first students. I paid his highest package. I actually didn't know who Ali was. I've seen a few of his reviews online, but my editor at the time, he was a fan of Ali. He was like, oh, like he's launching this course. I think it'd be good for us. So I do the thing where I'm like, hey, if I buy this, will you use it? Will you take advantage of it? And so that's how I got into Ecosphere. And one of the things that shocked me about Ali was like his team was so caring and nurturing, and they actually really care about people. And then also as a client, like he had something that I kind of didn't have, which was processes, procedures, all these sort of stuff like the SOPs. And he really gave me a baseline of how to operate as a YouTube business. So I really appreciate with him for that. And that, while I don't use his system exclusively, I've bought every other program like Casey Neistat's, Matt Diabella, so many other people, some guru things in the past too. That got me on the path of kind of treating YouTube like a business. And now, while I'm not where I want to be externally with all the vanity metrics, we're a lot closer to, and we have the infrastructure to get there. That's what I've been building the last few years. But then I did a review for PTYA. You can still find it. At the time, I was a top affiliate, and I caught his attention. I have a screenshot with like Tommy, which was the old salesperson or head of product. Yeah, that's how I actually met Ali and all that too. As they're scaling their offer, I guess their head of product or head of sales was like leaving at the time, and Angus, pretty much the CEO or general business manager for Ali, he reached out to me and headhunted me. And it was just a natural fit because we had very, very similar values too. When I took Ali as a client, I was thinking like, okay, compared to other offers, like I definitely don't make as much. I think about like, what would it be like if I got Ali as a raving client, right? A raving testimonial, and made it as a case study. You can always worry about the compensation later, but there's these few opportunities in life where, they only come once in a blue moon. And for me, I was like, if I can help Ali right before the S curve, then that'd be amazing. And so when I was scoping out Ali and looking through his things, I was like, okay, can I make significant changes that would change the value and impact of his business financially and also like fulfillment side and impact wise? I was like, absolutely, I can help advise because by so many programs, I've worked with a lot of different clients and stuff too. Second thing was like, okay, is Ali ethical? And honestly, in the space of creators, online business, Ali is one of the most ethical and like transparent people out there. The third thing I looked for was like, does he have organic brand presence? I'm like, no duh, he's a freaking YouTuber, bro. Like, so the reason why I looked for that, by the way, is because a lot of the relationship building and selling is already done before. You don't have to build the relationship on that one call. It takes a lot of the pressure away. So I really, really like that. And then his whole team also gives to. There's this culture thing. I got to see it behind the scenes because I signed up as a peer supporter in the past as well. That's how I got to know more of the team and the organization beyond Ali and all that too. I assessed it, and there's this great quote that I love by Peter Drucker. He says, all profit is derived from risk. And so having these things really reduce the risk, and the benefit would be pretty great because I could get bigger clients. I can use that as a testimonial for my consulting business and stuff too. And also, like, I'm really aligned with the whole creator space, you know? Like, I could meet a lot of cool people and stuff like that, make friends. And so that's why I took Ali as a client. I started selling for him. In a few months, we did like, I think almost 300K. Pretty quickly.
Mate, you've been absolutely crushing it on the sales front. We're just like absolutely amazed at the conversion rates you've been getting and thinking, fuck, we wish we had someone like Kevin in sales from day one. So yeah, I just wanted to say a huge thank you for also being part of this. It's a real pleasure to have you as part of the team. And I look forward to us meeting in person sometime soon, hopefully. See you later.
But one of the things that we realized through the Accelerator, one, we were really wondering like, okay, how do we make this product even better? Two, we wanted to review what was working, what was not working. And three, let's be honest, for $5,000, they would work with you for a whole year, provide you feedback and all that. And they were severely undercharging. I noticed also on their team, they've always had an aversion to sales and like value and charging a lot. And I think it's a double-edged sword where it's like, on one hand, they want to make sure that they're delivering enough value, but on the other hand, they might not be charging enough. And so long run, it's actually not good for the business because we're not making enough profit to have this operation be worth it. And two, it's not sustainable. In order to keep great people, you have to pay them well and all that too. And so that's the gap I noticed when I first came on. We took like almost a 3-month break. So what I was doing there during the break was really spending a lot of thinking time. There's this great book called The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. It's one of my frameworks that I use, and they always talk about like, you know, everybody makes mistakes, but how do you reduce the amount of mistakes you do? It's like through thinking time, and Alex Hormozy has the same concept as the ignorance tax too. And so this thinking time helps you think through your decisions. And so I was thinking about like this offer and how we structured it. I was thinking about what worked and what didn't. Who were the people that on the fulfillment team were nightmares to work with that I let into our program and didn't? And who were the dream clients too? Where were the friction points of the sales process that we had in the past? For example, it took a while for it to correct was we had a direct to checkout page, which was really hurting the offer because we couldn't screen, set expectations, and just make sure that we were protecting our community.
Previously, we were allowing people to buy the 5K product just on the website. And so some people would buy it through the website, but then they would, because they hadn't actually spoken to someone, they would have a slightly wrong expectation around what to expect from the thing. And we realized actually making everyone apply to join the Accelerator, and then we allows us to kind of say no to people, because there were some people who just had wildly unrealistic expectations. Like, I'm a total beginner. I'm 50 years old. I've never used a computer in my life. And I want to be able to quit my job within 3 months by starting a YouTube channel. You guys are going to help me. It's like, basically never going to happen. So like either we have a conversation to realign expectations, or we just say, sorry, I don't think this is the right fit for you. Whereas previously we would have got those people in just through the checkout link on the website.
Yep.
And now they're in, and now our customer success girls are like, okay, Alice has wildly unrealistic expectations, but she's already in, and like, now it's a bit awkward. And so we found that actually that expectation setting is also a really useful part of the sales process.
And it gave me no leverage because I'm just like, what? I can't let them in. They can always go to checkout thing. So take a lot more energy and persuasion on my end to just be like, hey, this might not be the best solution for you. I also took some time to really dive into the fundamentals. So obviously Hormozy is a really big thought leader in the space, but there's a lot of other thought leaders that people don't talk about, like Alan Weiss. He's like the consulting Bible guy. There's Ronald Baker that I found out from Christo. He's a pricing specialist guy. The guy who wrote Win Without Pitching Manifesto and Pricing Creativity. Oh, Blair Enns. And then obviously Daniel Priestley's work. I started reading Oversubscribed and started really thinking about how does this apply to Ali's funnel and stuff. And some of the things I noticed is that they're very feature heavy. And so like a lot of things that they thought were important weren't really necessarily important to the end user. So the difference between a feature is like, oh, what does it entail? But the benefit is like, why does it matter and what problem does it solve? Some other things I noticed too during this time was like, or what I was doing during this time is speaking to clients and students and building those relationships and trying to get the ins and outs, what was actually valuable, what based off what we thought. I think that feedback loop is so important. I was also thinking about like, how do we create scarcity? And one of the things I didn't like about the click funnel gurus is like, they'll tell you like, oh yeah, only 7 slots left. But when you go back to a sales page, like maybe a month later, it's still 7 slots left, no matter how many people you enroll. So I didn't like that. But the truth is all offers, whether you realize or not, have scarcity. And it's not this external scarcity that you put, this fake stuff. It has to be real. And part of it is knowing the capacity of an offer. So like knowing what your fulfillment capacity is and using that as a main point too. So I noticed a gap with capacity-based scarcity. And I was also talking to pricing specialists too during this time. And so this is the importance of having about like being compensated even when time is away, because someone who's a good head of sales or a good honestly entrepreneur, right? Like, you know, I'm a contractor technically for Ali Abdaal. And during this time, I'm always thinking about how do I optimize this offer, right? And this is why I really like subscription-based models too, where the Christo was talking about it the other week.
So this is how this works. When you do a retainer-based thing, you're just selling time. So time will eventually run out on that. When you do the subscription-based model, you and your client, and the way that R talks about this, you're kind of like partners. It's a different kind of relationship because they're in it, you're in it. So if you're looking at their website one day and you're like, you know, I just realized something. There's something wrong about this page and that page, and I want to do something with you. So you just call them up and you're like, hey, I'm your guy. I'm obsessing over this, like as if it was my company. And you're like, I propose we do this, this, and this, but let's schedule it for 3 weeks from now. Because, you know, we're tied up doing a lot of other stuff for you. Is this important? Yes. And so they're also saying like, now you're a vested partner in their business because you care. And they're paying you consistently to care. And that's a difference in mindset. So you're obsessed with continuing to evolve and deliver more value. If you do this right, they just stop thinking about that monthly subscription fee and you just get a check. And some months you do a lot of work and some months you don't do too much work. So the retainer model is very much waiting for you to call me, where the subscription model is I'm going to do stuff what I think is best for us, such that it's going to be joyful for you to continue to give me money. When they're in the driver's seat, I believe you're in a retainer model. When you're in the driver's seat, you're on a subscription model. That's as clear as I can think about it. When you're waiting for them to give you stuff to do, you're very much retainer. I'm not a proponent for retainer-based models, because ultimately what happens is you resent them for using too much of your time sometimes. They resent you because we're just burning money. We're not getting any value from it. That's the problem with retainer models. I've done this once or twice in my life. They don't last very long. Initially, it starts off great, and then it's just we both are upset at each other because it's a double negative thank you, but no thanks.
I was learning this whole subscription-based model that Christo has where, the provider, the contractor, basically gets to work on things that they feel like is best, right? And these are kind of like, it would be really hard to build out for these things, but these are very, very necessary, right? Anyways, so it's this break. And now we're on the track to get the offer started all over again. And so hypothetically, like one of the goals for the team is to get to 2 million ARR, annual recurring revenue. It's with their subscription-based product, right? PTYA Accelerator. Let's call this 2.0. We don't have a name for it. And I think the core offer, what it is like, it's a team enablement solution in advisory, right? To be very transparent, I wasn't there for them creating the offer or pricing, even though like if I was probably the founder of PTYA or in charge of it, I would make sure that your head of sales or the person speaking to and conducting all the interviews is on the call. I think that is essential. And I think that touch point of having both fulfillment and sales, like you need to have it. But they created the offer anyways, not my organization. But I get it. I'm a contractor, unofficial head of sales. And another thing too is like, what you'll find as a service provider, as someone like me, right? You're going to make these recommendations and they won't always take it. And that's okay. There's a great term in consulting where, sometimes, I might be wrong, I might be right, but since this is my area, I think I've paid a lot of ignorance tax in this field. But I also think too, like, sometimes clients just don't have a frame of reference of what can happen. And you can warn them all you want, but then it just might not work out. It's kind of like, so it's kind of like dating back in the day, and your friends warn you, hey, don't date that ABG, she has all the red flags, and you're just like, what, screw it, she's really hot, I think she's the one, blah blah blah. And then your friends are like, well, I told them, I don't know. And then you go through it, you find out they're toxic, they're also really, really avoidant, that you guys trigger each other and stuff, it's a bad match. And then you learn the lesson. Consulting oftentimes feels like this, and that's okay. Sometimes as a friend or an advisor or anything like that, one of the things I just learned was not to, it can really hurt the ego, but at the end of the day, it's their business. They're paying they're paying for my advisory either way, and they also go through the certain consequences. And my goal is to at least leave them better in a better position. Or best advise them so that they can make the best decision for themselves. I'm not trying to play Captain Save a Ho with my client. Now that you know the background of kind of like what is going on and the context and stuff, they want to relaunch this, but they want to get closer to that 2 million ARR or let's call it 200K monthly recurring revenue. And so as we're getting to relaunch, this is probably what I would do if I was relaunching the offer. So, and I've kind of advised them this in the past. So let's talk about the first thing. When I'm thinking about a relaunch, the first thing I look at is pricing. I think like a lot of people don't realize that pricing determines everything. Yes, like obviously pricing determines how much you make, how much you keep, and the clients you take on. And that is something that Peter Drucker, Ronald Baker, all these like specialists in pricing talk about all the time. And so based at the current pricing that they were thinking about, let's call it 6K per year or 6K per 6 months, right? 6K to hit that 2 million, they would probably need to sell about 333 units. Let's call it a unit per year. That's quite a bit of people. Ali has a growing fan base and a lot of people know him and he's getting more popular and stuff. Very small by the way, a very small portion of that fan base would be actually interested in the Accelerator. But something that, like, I think a lot of businesses, including myself, we always think more is better, right? But then we also think, like, it causes having more people and servicing more people. It causes more operational complexity. Causes you need more people for fulfillment, and you need more. It creates more complexity on the sales and the need for more sales too, which it's a never chasing. It's like a hamster wheel, obviously, like, honestly. And so one of the things that was going on in my mind was like, okay, let's say for every 25 clients we sign on, we'll need one account manager, and let's assume that's at 80% capacity, right? And one of the things I was thinking about was, like, we would need more account managers to manage those accounts, right? So while we could just hire more people for account managers, something I think about is, like, why do we need to do that if we don't have to, if that makes sense? Because at the end of the day, those account managers need to report to head of client success. Someone has to manage all those people. And the more people, the more complex things get. I mean, look at any corporate company, right? And look at the bureaucracy, and that's pretty much what you're creating. So, like, my thought from a sales point of view is, like, even if we can double or triple, like, our pricing, then it can cut down the number of account managers, and that's only one part of the business, right? There's, like, other roles, YouTube strategists and all that, but I think account managers is pretty easy. So we can cut it down. We can cut down the account managers to 6 account managers versus, like, a 12 to run the whole operation, which decreases the operation costs and also increases the attention to most clients. I think a lot of times, a lot of organizations will make the mistake of kind of running their team like 100%, and what happens? They burn out. Then there's turnover. So you don't want to do that, but you don't want them to be idly twiddling their thumbs. You want them to be about 80%. And the same is true with sales too, right? Like, if you have so many sales calls, you're, like, burning out. That's not good for anyone. Long-term sustainability. And that's the name of the game. And so, like, my thought was, like, okay, if we increase the price to $12K, yes, there are pros and cons, but the pros are it would decrease the need for sales. We would only need 166 units per year. And then if those people renew, it cuts that in half. We would need less people to run the organization, decrease account managers, and it would decrease the operation costs. Now, when I think operation costs, like, I think about things like software. One of the things that Ali's organization uses is something called HubSpot. It's like a CRM company. It is really, really expensive. I advised against it, and now they're realizing, oh, shoot, this is really, really expensive. I was like, could have built the whole thing just based off of $100, $300 per month, but it's all good. So that's what I mean by ignorance tax, right? Like, sometimes they can listen to you and they might not take your advice, but that's the ignorance tax that they have to pay to really understand that lesson. And so, and here's the thing, there might be things that I don't see because I'm looking at one department. As holistic as I try to be, I don't see everything. I don't know everything. So they made the decision that they did. But the downside to this is if you're going to increase it to 12K, the truth is 12K is not for everyone. It's a very, very certain demographic, which leads me to my second point, right? Is, like, looking at the client avatar and understanding who is this product really for? Who is part-time YouTuber Accelerator really for? And so one of the things that when I look at PTYA as a cohort product in the past, or even this last year, was that they were focusing on the general market. It's a very great generalist product. But the problem is if you're going to play the generalist product, right, it's going to attract so many people and you're playing the volume game. But PTYA, it was kind of weird because it was like playing in between. It's like they were trying to give really, really high quality to, like, a mass market model, which is really, really difficult. And props to Ali for like them doing their best. I mean, I think like given the resources and everyone that they've hired that I've seen, they've like done an amazing job for that. If the goal is to hit this like revenue goal, I think about, okay, who is this really for? Who are the people that we're really helping? And not just from like, how can we maximize, who is the target market that we want to maximize the revenue for? It's not only that, it's like, who are the people that we really love working with too? And so there's usually like, when I look at the generalist market, there's really the beginners, intermediate, and experts. And the equivalent for Ali's framework is like, well, the people who are like part of the Get Going group, the people part of the Get Good group, and people part of the Get Smart group. Those are the equivalent things. And when I look at the regular PTYA course, I think like things like, it makes sense for the Get Going and Get Good people, right? Typically, those people can't afford things like agencies. They can't afford things like paying, like for example, my team to operate, I'm paying over like $1,000 to $2,000 per month just for content and stuff and just having the right people. Well, I'm trying to increase my cost too, which is kind of weird, right? Like I'm trying to pay people more and just increase our output. That's my organization. But if you told me this when I was first starting, it would have gone over my head and been way too hard. Okay, so there's that. And then there's the Get Smart, which is like Get Good and Get Smart. And this is where I think a lot of the Accelerator students, in my opinion, kind of fit in, that would cause the least amount of friction to the fulfillment team. Because like, unlike the beginners, like they don't have a current system, they don't have a current team. They're trying to get over the beginner hurdles of like, how do I shoot a video? I feel nervous on camera. And like I would say the Get Good and Get Smart people are kind of like, how do I build a really, really great team? How do I double down on the success I'm already having? How do I build out offers? How do I scale? And what we don't realize is like these people on the intermediate to advanced, they have leverage. So one small change, if we can provide advisory or think about it, like the whole offer is like, you get access to Ali's direct team for office hours. That's like, how often do you get like a 5 million subscriber YouTube channel at your disposal and you can go almost every single day of the week? That is crazy, right? And that's what I was talking about. Like the offer is really severely undervalued, you know? And so, okay, so now that, you know, like what I kind of defined what I think is, you know, the ideal market, there's obviously the ideal market avatar that we should all do. But for the sake of this podcast, like I think about like, okay, what does that look like? Once we know our client avatar, then we know what to charge. And so I think the rule of thumb is 10% of the income or revenue. And that's why we start off with pricing first, because if we want to sell a 12K package, what does that look like for an ideal avatar? Well, someone would have to be making at least anywhere from, if they're going to do half a year, if it's 12K for 6 months, then they would have to be making like 120K to double that, 240K. And that's why I was saying it's not for everyone, because it's a much smaller part of the market, but we're being a lot more specific about those and impactful about the problems that we help. And so what are some of those problems? Well, or who might that target audience be? Well, it might be someone who is getting almost 2 million views per month, right? And when I think about like the problems of this like avatar, right, who is making at least 120K like through content or just from their 9 to 5 or something like that where they can invest, what are their problems? Well, they need help building the right team, they need help building the right offers, and they need the right strategy to kind of put everything together and make sure everything, like customer journey, right? Making sure everything flows from place to place to place. And like I mentioned earlier, like the people who have more, I don't want to say money, I was going to say that, but who have more business-related problems, it becomes easier because these people have more leverage. One small change for one of these bigger creators is a lot more impactful to the business than someone who has 0 subscribers, right? So an example of this, like that I wrote down in my notes, was like, let's say if I gave a video editor, a highly skilled Mr. Beast level of video editor, to a 1 million subscriber channel, and gave that same video editor to a subscriber channel, who would make more money? Obviously, well, unless those aren't all Chinese farm bot subscribers, I would assume that the larger subscriber channel would have more leverage because they have an active viewer base too, and the YouTube algorithm kind of knows its like target demographic, right? So that's the first example, but also the second thing too, when it comes in terms of pricing too, 10% of someone who's making 120K is a lot less painful than someone who's like making 12K and 10% of that, right? Like, I remember when I was in college, like I didn't have the most money and stuff. And I remember every single dollar was really, really painful. I would think about like, oh, I want to go out to eat, but what are all the happy hours I can go to? What are the cheapest things to go out? You know, it's a lot more painful. And when I was a pharmacist making like 150K, like I didn't really care. Like, and that's the thing. It's a lot less painful. And so in my opinion, I think this does one thing. I think it's more ethical to sell to people with more discretionary income. And then the second thing is like, it creates a better relationship where it becomes a lot more resentment free. There's something when you take every single last dollar from someone, they get in this savior complex. And I've made this mistake too on my personal offers where, you know, like I took someone who maybe overextended themselves, and now they're in a situation where like they're counting on you for everything, they're demanding everything from you, and they're like expecting you to become Captain Save It Ho. And this is what we call the savior complex. And what we don't realize, this is kind of like the inner work and spiritual stuff that people always talk about, is like a lot of times it's our own ego that takes on these clients because we might want to help them too, but it's usually our ego trying to prove our own self-worth by saving everyone around us too, right? And this is the nice guy complex. When I was dating, this was like, yeah. So, you know, I just try to avoid that altogether. And I'm just like, okay, who are the people that we can take on that would be resentment free, right? Okay. So now that we have a better idea of like what these people's problems are, the client avatars, there's a lot more to client avatar, by the way. Now I like to think about the third thing is like the offer stack. So specifically, it's like, what does this offer look like? But what are the new features and why do those things matter? Features and benefits again. And so, like I mentioned, Ali's team, they came up with the core offer, what they believed like was really good on their end. Ideally, like I said, I would like to be there, but since it's out of scope, you know, I don't push back and I still give my insight. But I think like if I were to do things, like I would make sure your head of sales is there too. And there's a lot of different frameworks when you're trying to create the offer stack. Like in 100 million offers, Hormozy always talks about like the problem, solution. You refine that over time, you combine that. There's that whole feedback loop of all that. And the good thing about this is like, since we have like clients already, we can run, you can do focus groups and like ask them like, hey, you know, what are your thoughts about this? Would this actually help? Or just like, pilot test it and just be like, hey, we have X amount of slots for these bonuses. We notice that you're most active. Would you be open to trying this out? Right? Things like that. So that's a framework I really like a lot. But then I also think since Ali is very like feature based, we also need to connect it with the real problem. And so something I've always noticed with Ali's, and one of the actually things that I have to do a lot behind the scenes that they probably don't even realize, is that I have to translate this, right? So they list out all these features like office hours, or like we'll do a channel audit, or we'll give feedback, or video review feedback, and all that sort of stuff too. It's like, that is great, but like people are like, oh, what the heck is it for? And so like, for example, when I hear a feature like office hours, I'm like, why do people care about that? Well, you can get like people want to care about that because they can get specific solutions to specific situational problems that they're going through. So for example, let's say if I have 5 candidates for hiring a video editor, I would want to know, how does one go about like hiring the best editor so it'll reduce the pain of me onboarding and reduce my ignorance tax, right? People don't want to make costly mistakes. Okay, let's talk about a initial channel audit, or something that in consulting we call a current state analysis, right? If I put that on, it's gonna put people to sleep. Dude, no one wants to hear boring, like, oh, current state analysis, right? But why do people care about that? Well, it helps us focus and identify the big movers in the business to maximize their ROI in a solution like this. So, for example, they might think, oh, I need to, like, I might need to go through all the courses and, like, attend all the office hours to maximize the ROI. But when we sit down and map out the goals, what does success look like? How do we measure success? It gives the client a better experience, but also they can maximize their ROI. They're paying good money for this. Why wouldn't I want to maximize their ROI and make sure they're getting the most out of this, right? So that's something else I think about. And then the video review, feedback, and all that too. Why do people care about that? Well, it's to maximize their chance to go viral. It shifts the odds in their favor. At the end of the day, what beginners a lot of times don't realize, and I get this on the sales call sometimes, where they're like, how do you guarantee success? I'm like, you're on organic. There is no guaranteeing. You can only shift the odds in your favor as much as possible. The algorithm still needs to find your video, know who to serve your video to. But what we want to do is just shift the odds in our favor so that we have a video every single time that kind of, like, if we're going to invest in it, we want to maximize our ROI too, right? And so these are things I think about. And then I'm also thinking about, like, what are problems that I mentioned on sales calls that aren't being addressed. So, for example, one of the things that I think we can address really quickly is, like, if we have a thumbnail feedback thing and have a dedicated person owning it, like a YouTube strategist or something like that. I recommended this a few times, and these are product features that I really like from Film Boost, Thumbnail University. It's not an equivalent product, but I do that. I also have my own mastermind where I have my thumbnail strategist in there, and he can give feedback too. But I think about all this sort of stuff too. And then I also think about, okay, with any offer, how do you get people to take action too, right? Like, and not in an opposing way, right? Like, you're in or out. It's like ethical. So during my call with, like, the team, like with the client success or head of product now, Allison, I was like asking, hey, it's like, since we're testing this out, what's the max capacity that you would want right now? And she said 30 to 50 people, which is everything that I need to know to, like, communicate to offer, right? So think about that. That's like the offer stack, because when I'm doing high ticket sales, I need to think about, like, how do I best present this offer? And if you like ever have a sales call with me, something you may not realize is that everything that I'm talking about is customized to your situation. So I don't have a script for the specific offer. I have always, like, bullet points and talking points and the general problems that most people have. But usually everything is, like, customized. That's why it takes a lot of brains for me to do sales calls too. After, like, I have this offer stack, something I'm doing simultaneously at the same time, the fourth thing is, like, I'm actually talking to the teams and trying to get everyone's expectations. And so the key players I'm trying to get expectations from is, like, one, the general strategy. So I would be talking to the CEO or the general business manager, which is Angus, right? And what I'm trying to do is, like, trying to dissect, okay, what are the current revenue goals that we have? What are if we're relaunching this offer, what are the starting times, tentative start times, and all that we want to do, and the expectations, right? Because, like, part of a CEO's, like, they want to make sure things get done, but I also need to know what are his expectations, and also politely, you need to be very, very careful about this, because people, I guarantee, will F it up. But I also challenge certain expectations about, redefining things. How do we get more clear on the expectations, and really ask, is this expectation even really necessary? I'm not very big on, like, things like meetings just for the sake of meetings. There's salespeople that, like, love daily meetings and stuff. They think it's the core of the business, but I find it as a waste of time. I'm like, what are we trying to do at the end of the day, right? So like I have certain things, like for example, one of the things that when I was talking to Angus about was like, you know, if the goal is to get to 200K, I mean, he told me how many subscriptions he wanted or units per month. But then I was also thinking about like, you know, at the end of the day, would you be against the possibility of increasing our prices too, right? Like to get to that milestone. It's something I think about. The second person I talked to is the head of the like fulfillment. So this is like client success, head of product, which is Allison. And again, trying to get like her expectations that she wants to communicate during the transition from like sales to onboarding, like information that I can have. And then also I also provide suggestions about how to better communicate too. For example, one of the things that she was talking about was like, hey, can you flag like it would be really, really helpful if we kind of knew like the expectation, if there was like if we knew if they fell into get good or get started, get good, or get smart. And one of the things I suggested in the CRM, if because I do write notes, like extensive notes for everything, it's like probably borderline like too much. But then like in the notes, I'm just like, hey, if you have a 5-point scale, I can rank them, and then your team would just know, right? And that would decrease the back and forth too. So I'm thinking about that. And then I'm also thinking about like elements that would make the offer even more irresistible if we can actually incorporate the idea. So like example, thumbnail, like content packaging feedback, right? That would increase the offer way more too to our target audience that we're trying to nail down. And then also getting any changes to offer, because especially when you're relaunching an offer, there might be things that we might be discontinuing. There might be terms that, you know, were used in the past that are no longer relevant. And it's important for me to kind of know all those things. I also record these calls too, just to make sure that there's this term called PTYA, cover your ass. I never like to play these games like, well, I told you so, or anything like that. You're always in a losing battle. It's just like fighting with your girlfriend and stuff, and why most relationships fail, because we're too focused on being right. But it's just like, you know, I can refer back to it for clarification or anything like that too. Okay, so now that I have the expectations from the team, the rest of the team, now is the point where I try to strategize my call capacity and the sales call strategy. And to be honest, I hate the word sales. In my mind, it's always like advisory, right? That's like a more appropriate word. It's like advisory, and just like what I'm trying to do is, one, kind of qualify to see if we can help this person. Two, if we can help this person, how do we maximize our ROI? And three, assess how this product is going to be different from their other solutions. And four, really identify, hey, if you do nothing, what happens then? Because is this problem even big enough that's worth solving? That's something that's going through my mind. And so that's what I think about with advisory, but I also think about when it comes to sales, right? It's like, I think majority of the offer, like 90% of the offer, should be like sold if it's an irresistible offer. I think a lot of times, like with high ticket salespeople and all that, I mean, it's their business, right? They want to increase the ability of sales reps and all that, and that is important. But I think like also, if you have an irresistible offer that pretty much sells itself, then you can hire the level of talent. You don't need a high level talent to get on a team, because the offer, like the less persuasion skills that are needed, the less sales risk that you need, right? And so one of my goals too for the whole sales process is like, how do I position this into like Harvard? So actually, Oversubscribed is a great example of this, where he talks about Harvard and the positioning of Harvard and how to be selective with your clients. And I try to do the same thing. And that's why the information about our capacity, all this stuff is real. It's not fake. And also something I also think about is how to position that messaging, that offer there too, and how to make it a real interview, where there's an acceptance and there's a denial type of thing too. Also, I think if I were Ali's team, I would probably take over writing the sales copy and just positioning the offer as well, because I think everything on that main sales page, when someone applies to your offer, the messaging, the expectations, all that is there. And I know a lot of the points that I want to get covered before our call too. And that's why I think talking to your clients is really, really big, because there's almost this feedback loop, right? If I'm going on to these calls and I'm realizing a lot of people who don't have a YouTube channel, for example, let's say if we're just targeting the Get Smart or advanced people, right? Let's say if the people that we're targeting have never created a YouTube channel before, they don't have a team or anything like that, they're not our ideal market. And what we need to do is communicate that on our sales page or on our offer page too. It becomes this feedback loop where, you can refine your sales copy and get more qualified clients with time too by tweaking the copy too. So think about it like that. And something I think about too, when it comes to sales call strategy, because over these last few months, something that people don't know is that we actually had a wait list going on, and we have over 100 plus people, plus renewals from the last year too. And so something I'm thinking about in the back of my mind that I was actually working on today was one, copy. What is the best, how and what is the best way to reach out to them, right? Is a more individual message better? Is an email blast better? My thoughts on this is probably doing a email blast, letting people know that we're going to be doing interviews in 2 to 3 weeks, sending another email on the new offer, and to have them reapply or have some CTA there. And then third one is maybe individually reaching out to those people who applied and who are interested or no longer interested. That's the level of priority that I think about, right? Ideally, the most excited people or the people that want to do it the most will just apply for the offer, right? And I want to make sure that those are probably our ideal market. Same goes with the renewal. So on the calls with the team, I'm just asking if you had to prioritize one, what's more important, new students or renewals? So getting that answer too and prioritizing that. Also, I think about my own sales call capacity. I think if you've never done sales and you think you can do 12 calls a day, but if you want to do a quality, really an interview type of thing, really we're looking at a max of 3 to 6 per day. I think if you want to do quality, right? And I also think about not only the call capacity of how many calls that we can do per day, but also the timing of the offer. If your core hours for your offer is between this time to this time, let's say 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I would want to make sure that all my calls are around that time, so that the people who are jumping on the calls can actually attend the fulfillment times and all that sort of stuff too. And since Ali's offer is a UK offer, it's going to apply mostly to the US and Europe, not so much for the Australian market. And then third thing I'm thinking about is okay, because of these new changes in this offer, what are the new agenda points that I need to set up too, right? I think those are really, really important. I don't have a sales script. I always have an agenda though of the typical questions I ask, specific problems and specific talking points I typically talk about on every single call. And then I also think about obviously natural ways for scarcity, again, capacity based versus external type of thing too. And so I think if you are a head of sales or anything like that, you can take this very, very similar strategy and just, if you're a good head of sales, if it makes you a good entrepreneur, because we're doing everything from market research, which is client avatar, pricing, which is just being a good profitable business owner. We're thinking about offer stack. We're thinking about the best way to market. We're thinking about the best ways to have conversations. There's just so many skills required. And so you can easily see that this type of role is beyond a closer role, because if I was a closer, I would just honestly take calls and just I'm not sure if you ever worked with high ticket salespeople, but some of them will just promise you the world unethically, and I don't know. I'm not all about that. My prediction, if we keep the pricing at 5 to 6K, we're going to run into capacity issues. We're going to run into burnout. We're probably going to have to pause the offer a lot sooner than anticipated. And something I also think about with Ali is like he has a high trusted brand. And it's not a question of if it will sell, if we'll get conversions. It's like the thing that I'm thinking in my mind is, can we sustain sales because of fulfillment, right? Like we need to make sure that, you know, people that we're very, very specific on who we're helping, who we're not helping, and making sure that our team just doesn't burn out because of it. So those are my thoughts. What would you do differently if you're head of sales, and what are the questions that you'd be asking? Because I don't know everything. I'd also love to hear any insights that you had or anything that you kind of thought of. Subscribe to the channel, mother people. Bye.